Today I'm joined by costume designer Zohie Castellano, whose work on Leviticus helps transform a regional Australian coming of age romance into something haunting and unsettling through color, silhouette, texture, and symbolism. Zoe, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Leviticus, it's so effective because the love story feels authentic before the horror arrives. Um, like watching the film, I kept feeling that the costumes were helping us like relate to or care for these characters before they ever had to confront, the darkness that consumes them. Was that your primary objective from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, it was like you know, I guess it requires a lot of consideration to make something look effortless and to convey the meaning you want it to, and especially because the boys are kind of hidden at the beginning, or there's different elements to yeah, how they're like presenting themselves to the world that they're in. So yes, yeah, I thought about it a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Mhm.
Adrian Chiarella is making his feature directorial debut here. Incredible achievement that for his first feature film, he does something so amazing like this. The film arrives with such a confident visual identity is one of the things that I think most critics and fans are really responding to. What did your earliest creative conversations with him look like, and how collaborative was the process of defining what I guess, Australian Gothic would mean for this particular story?
Well, I think yes, I agree. Like Adrian has just done such an incredible job. And I think it also came back to I think he trusted us a lot. I think the people he chose to bring on, like I went through an interview process and we connected. So there was yeah, I was like quite delighted during the process actually of the trust I got from him. Um, which I think really allows people to do good work when you are um yeah, like allowed to just like let things emerge and for things to develop and it's like also quite an intuitive process as well as like an intellectual process. But Adrian and I met up for like yeah, coffees and stuff before even pre-production began, and we were just talking about the film. And I know he did like early testing with Tyson, the DOP, looking at like they were shooting on these anamorphic lenses and looking at how things responded. So we were talking about things quite early in terms of yeah, like texture and silhouette and yeah, like how to like evoke different yeah, like kind of textures through the narrative through the textures, you would say. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess
no,
so,
it was
right?
really yeah, I and then in the first week of pre-production, me and Adrian and Tyson and Beth all like got together and had some conversations about yeah, just how we were going to bring the images together and yeah, and it was yeah, such a pleasure to collaborate with all of them really.
I can imagine. Like, talk me through the various inspirations you drew from, whether it be like iconography or art, the landscape, and how you took those references that big and translate them into like a teenager's clothing without it ever feeling overly designed.
Ah, um, I'm glad you feel that way. I guess early with these meetings with Adrian and just like to feel through because we were talking about this Australian Gothic vibe to it. There's also this isolation to the boys, which is very much, I think, a part of the Australian identity or like our psychology is we feel very
Yeah.
isolated and disconnected. And the landscape reflects that. And I went through the script and pulled out different images that spoke to me, like, and like well that were important as well I would say like frogs and snakes and spiders and um the fact we were dealing with like a psychological manifestation of of a demon, but what even was that? So then I was looking into yeah, like Goya paintings, like, and I
Yeah,
think there's something really like haunting about some of those. You could say demons that are like swirling around, the heads or the figures of people, and then it's sort of I was looking at those things, but I think it's always more interesting to give things complexity and humanness. So we kind of flipped the idea of Ryan being like a demon into something ethereal and almost angelic, and I think that's kind of where you don't. Of course, want it to be cliche. It has to be kind of real and natural. But yeah, it was working with pulling through different like textile kind of choices that related to these different like script images that I felt were symbolic, um, like the frog skin or like lace, like a
yeah.
spider's web or this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ryan and Name, they're introduced to, like, when I first saw the film, I was like, they felt really opposed, very opposite. Ryan feels quite comfortable in his own skin, while Name appears to retreat into oversized clothing and darker silhouettes. But as the story progresses, I feel like those visual identities begin to shift. Can you talk us through approaching that emotional journey of those two boys through costumes?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're yeah, like when you like someone. Oh, you admire someone, you kind of start to like mimic them. It's like a almost a human thing we do
Yeah,
kind of naturally without really thinking about it. So, um, yes, name is very hidden and I guess he admires Ryan's like confidence, and wants that in himself. And Ryan has this snake ring that, in the story, you don't necessarily see it in the film, but it was in the kind of backstory that Ryan gives that to Name on the bus, which is when they've sort of like joint forces, like they know that something's after them, but they're like deciding to kind of go on this mission together, you would say. So yeah, it became kind of like a reflection, I guess, of them. And like with Name, that his clothes became, he was in a size up at the beginning, and then
yeah,
they became like his correct size, so he was more like embodied in himself. And yeah, I think it was just yeah, just sensing into what feels right for like the specific scene and what's going on.
yeah,
Emotionally, and then just trying to, yeah, like I guess reflect that in a subtle way. And it's,
yeah.
yeah. And
I
I
love
wanted it
that.
to, yeah, feel natural as well. Like I didn't want to keep introducing garments just for like kind of convenience, because you need so
Yeah,
many multiples and stunt doubles and all this kind of stuff. So it was very much working with actually having um, like also a very natural kind of boys' closet. You don't have all these different clothes, but you have different
yeah,
ways of wearing them in styled in different kind of, yeah, combinations. And then how that like, yeah, evoked their journey. Yeah.
yeah. How it evoked their like internal struggle or their emotional mindset, and a lot of what I think costume designers do so effectively, particularly contemporary costumes, is that it gives us a level of authenticity because we have to believe these people are putting these clothes on every morning. But
Mm.
it's also a subliminal thing that we are maybe not even realizing that Naeem's clothing does become more fitting because he's starting to feel a bit more comfortable in his own skin. And then, of course, everything goes pear-shaped, which we'll now talk about because there's a recurring idea in this film that I really loved about that desire and fear can occupy the same space. I think we can all relate to that. Of course, this film heightens it to 11. Were there wardrobe moments where you consciously tried to make something feel or look enticing or attractive, but also have it be threatening at the same time, particularly maybe in the evangelical scenes?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess the Ryan monster costume, like that top was like sewn. I was very like specific about the fabric I wanted to use. And I want it to have this kind of translucency to it. So it had this like ghost-like quality, but also, it kind of the way it falls off Stacy's body, it's like kind of showing his um physique under it, you would say. So there's sort of
Yeah.
like like from Name's perspective, um, and also from the audience's perspective, when you're like not sure if it's him or if it's the entity. Um, yeah, that was like, but again, not wanting to go too far. So it's quite simple, really, that costume, but it was deliberately lighter. And also like the lighter jeans, he only wears the entity only wears that um, really pale blue jeans. Like Ryan only wears mid blue kind of thing. So there's just different
Mhm.
subtle things that you sort of do, and it kind of lifts him out of the space. But it's the same cut that he normally wears as Ryan. So you're not kind of necessarily noticing these subtle differences. But one thing I did do at when the first time we see the Ryan monster. Like at the funeral wake, and it's kind of down the back garden gate, and that was very interesting because part of the law was that the more time that Name and Ryan spend together, the better the entity is at mimicking them.
Yeah, of course.
So that was kind of part of the thing. So then I thought, oh, if that's the first time that we see the monster, like he's not going to be in a exact costume copy. So I had him in like a different shirt that was more sheer and like a plain tie that was in the same color scheme as what Ryan had on, but like it was just a very subtle difference. But it's kind of like as when you're watching it as the audience, then you're like completely lured into that. Um, spider's web, you would say, that
Yeah.
that name is lured down into, and then you're kind of seduced by that. But then when it cuts to Ryan, it's not him, and it's not a direct costume copy. So that was just like subtle kind of ways of playing.
That's
I mean,
so
you
cool.
wouldn't notice that
No,
necessarily,
of
but
course
part of
not.
the experience as the
Mm.
audience. So
But you
yeah.
kind of do, you don't notice it, but there's something about that that subliminally makes us think that something's maybe slightly off. I just love it how costume and even set design and cinematography, a lot of the department heads on a film are doing a lot of the storytelling. It's not just about the words on the page and the performance. I just love that example. Another one is I read that you've mentioned that Stacey and Joe's color palettes were influenced by their eye colors, with blues and hazel greens, creating a subtle visual connection. What's that? That's the kind of detail I think that audiences wouldn't consciously notice, but again, we feel it. So, what drew you to that decision?
I think it was just like when I was pulling out the script images or what felt important to me in terms of like the storytelling devices, like the frogs, but also it was the eye contact. And I think that that's really all you've got in this environment of like this oppressive environment that they're in. That's kind of those moments. It's like you live for those moments of eye contact. I mean, we would anytime you have a connection with someone and the eye contact is like, it's like you're almost stripped naked if you're having that
Yeah,
kind of eye contact with someone. It can feel like that. So I think I just yeah, it's something like I just did intuitively that I sort of thought was a nice way of because it's kind of also has this quite calming soft kind of effect on the audience as well. But I remember I hadn't met Joe yet, but I asked Adrian, I was like, oh, can you get him to take a photo of his eyes like in good light for me, please, so I can like make sure.
yeah.
And I was like, put like his eyes in the mood board and like was matching everything up with the colors.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
That's so cool. Um, the church community is a whole different thing, and it's a real stark contrast between the two boys and the evangelicals in this community. I'd love for you to talk us through the textures that you decided to go with, because what those scenes create is this sense of something is spiritually wrong long before the horror fully arrives. Well, that was my feeling. I just felt like something's really off here, and I think a lot of it had to do with the visual language that we were seeing on screen. How did you develop that vocabulary?
I love that you say that. It's so nice to hear people's responses.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, oh, great. But
yes,
yeah, yeah, that was, I think, like the church was really important because I mean, the whole film, like, kind of hinges on that church community, and that kind of defines the world in a way. And yeah, it was interesting. Like this was in some of these earlier conversations that we were having. Like all HODs was these pink blinds. It
Oh,
was kind of like the sad pink color. Um, that like yeah, I think I know Adrian was drawn to, and same with yeah Beth and Tyson, and that was like then therefore we I felt like, of course, there's a oppressive feeling. We didn't want much color in the church communities, and also in the film, the season transitions into winter. So, and it's also the reflection of the fact that it by the end of the film, it's just this hellhole that Name needs to escape. So, the church community gradually like get darker in each
yeah,
scene. It's like I was looking at Roy Anderson's color palettes, like when a pigeon, that one, like pondering existence, and all of those kinds of neutral
yeah,
textures that are like a skin kind of texture in a very uncomfortable way. And then when you've got the light from the pink blinds that is like cast this like hue across everyone's faces, they're actually like suffocating in their own skin. And
yeah.
and then yeah, and it was kind of
It's
like
creepy.
it was incredible how it's worked. But that was like I think a beautiful example of like all of us working together to make that come yeah to come out like that, and therefore the
Yeah,
pink becomes this kind of symbolic color that reoccurs throughout the film in like different scenes as well. But you know, you've got Izzy in that first church scene who's up singing on the church band, and she's wearing like this kind of sad pink dress, so it's like connected to the weird blind color. And then yeah, and then it's also the moments of I guess because you've got this whole angels versus demons kind of thematic like through line with the film. So the church community were also like that, well in the light and darkness. And sometimes, you know, most people say are in darker colors, but you've got Arlene, the mother's in this white color. But again, it's kind of like she's not an angel. She's like, so it's kind of playing with that, yeah, like that contrast of perception as well.
yeah.
It's yeah, it's
It's
nice.
so interesting. Yeah, you know what? Like because a lot of the film is the color palette is quite muted. It's like the colors drained from this particular part of regional Victoria. And you know, I'm sure you've been there. I've been there many times. I know exactly. It felt very authentic to me, like I was very familiar with it. But on the other hand, I noticed that there were times where instead of deliberately withholding color, you were allowing it to exist. And not just you, of course, your colleagues, your other heads of department were doing the same thing. It's a great example. And it brings me to this. Horror is having a really remarkable moment as a vehicle for really deeply personal storytelling. I just wonder, from your experience on Leviticus, what excites you about using costume to explore themes that might be difficult to approach just through a standard drama alone?
Yeah, it's about like how we relate to ourselves, I think, as a soul, and what how we are
Yeah,
connected to these other worlds of existence and what that even means. And I think that yeah, I think what I feel like that's why horror's having such a resurgence is because it sort of satiates that. And also yeah, it's a vehicle to explore this whole yeah dimension of human experience that I think people want. And I think
yeah,
yeah, and it's like been done in so many different ways. So I'm excited to do more of it because I love the creative like exercise of what of how I can yeah like contribute my skills to the story and how to
yeah.
make it more amazing, because it's yeah it's such a it's so satisfying to yeah, to work with for
It
me.
sure is. And it's like, particularly on a film like this, which was, a small budget independent film, you don't have the luxury of millions and millions of dollars to have visual effects and prosthetic makeup and all this other stuff. And so you do have to lean on these subtle tools that costumes and sets and cinematography and editing provide to creep us the hell out. And that's exactly what you did. On Leviticus, every creative department is contributing to the emotional storytelling, and your work, Zoe, is a huge part of why it lingers. And on that note, thank
Thank
you very much for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Robert. That's so sweet. Thank you for having me.